Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar on automating your Microsoft applications with RPA. In today's session, you'll hear about many of Microsoft's key application technologies and how they can be automated in conjunction with RPA. My name is Daryl Walker, and I am a solutions engineer here at Fortra, primarily dealing with our automation tools, one of those tools being Automate, which we're going to be looking at today. We'll start the session with a quick introduction to Microsoft application automation. Then we're going to walk through several potential Microsoft automation use cases that your organizations can consider when looking to streamline Microsoft applications and user workloads. We'll also give an introduction to Fortra's Automate, our RPA solution, and also provide a short technology use case demo. If time permits, at the end, we'll have a few minutes of Q&A, but if we don't get to it, we'll go ahead and grab all those questions and send some answers out at the end of the webinar as well. Feel free to enter your questions in the chat window as we go, and we'll address them if time allows at the end. Again, if not, we will send those out after the webinar along with a link to the recording here. So let's talk a little about Microsoft applications. We all use Microsoft applications in our daily work lives. Most of us, that means we're really working with Windows desktops or laptops, but we also probably use one of several other Microsoft Office or Office 365 applications in our day-to-day activities. For example, we could be handling correspondence between other coworkers via Teams, maybe responding to emails, dealing with Excel documents, or giving a presentation or a pitch to the management team, or doing a webinar like we are today. Chances are you also have the need to automate some of these most manual processes that are worked on throughout the day. As your workload increases, unfortunately, the number of hours in the day does not. So ultimately, being able to automate your workflows allows your teams to better serve your vendors, customers, and your employees. So how can we automate some of our daily tasks within this vast collection of software? Well, let's take a look at some examples for some of these various Microsoft applications. Probably one of the top things that we help customers with is the automation of Excel file processing. Often we work with users who are performing manual copying and pasting of information to and from CSV files or spreadsheets. They may also be performing data cleansing activities such as record validation or cleansing of data by comparing it against an existing database. They may also be receiving spreadsheets that contain changes that need to be merged with other data. So Automate contains a built-in Excel automation actions to process files without even needing Excel to be installed. No matter what type of CSV, Excel, or other data you're receiving, Automate can help to streamline the process of getting that data entered, validated, and processed efficiently without the need of keying or rekeying data. You can use any of Automate's built-in 700 activities or even repurpose existing Excel macros or use other automation techniques like VB scripting and ActiveX automation to create your Excel automation tasks. Accessing and automating databases such as SQL Server, Access, and other databases is also very popular, especially when you need to query or update data on the fly. Using our database actions, you can write tasks to process data from SQL Server or just about any other database server, including Oracle, IBM, MySQL, Postgres, etc. You can also tap into the power of existing stored procedures when needed as well. You may also consider moving some of the tasks that you're currently scheduling via things like your SQL agent in favor of Automate so that all of your jobs, SQL jobs, can be easily scheduled and logged in one place. Notifications are sent automatically upon success and failure as well. You can also incorporate any of the other 700 plus actions to further enhance the capabilities of your database automations. You may also have the need to run SSIS packages for ETL or data exchange, or maybe you want to run and schedule SSRS reports. So Automate also has a trigger that can catch, insert, update, and delete notifications for SQL Server and Oracle databases that can also be used as a trigger to actually kick off automated tasks and workflows. Many of our customers also use Exchange, but also in ever-growing are moving to Office 365 for email. Monitoring email inboxes and capturing those messages is a great way to incorporate email into your automations. So imagine a vendor invoice coming in, being retrieved, we OCR that information and placed into a document management system, process that all in one automation task. Or perhaps, we receive a help desk request, maybe we get a password reset request that comes in. We can have that password reset, that new password distributed out to the user, and all that done automatically. Automate has a real-time mail trigger, which can be used to monitor and exchange mailbox in real time, trigger an automation task to run based off some set criteria, such as a sender domain or an attachment being available. You can then capture that inbound message and parse the data from it, including any attachments. Email automation really is a super strength for Automate. Onboarding new users with Active Directory is a very common use for automation as well. So imagine being able to receive info on a new user from your HR system, have that information flow through an automated workflow to create that new user, assign it to any appropriate groups based off department, and maybe create a mailbox, provision Office 365 license, and then add the user to any other related applications automatically without the need for your help desk or IT team to intervene. So Automate can help do this today. The process could even create a help desk ticket and add some details in and then close out that ticket automatically for metrics and tracking purposes. So imagine how much time you can give back to your help desk and support teams by taking away some of these time-consuming, mundane onboarding tasks via automation. OneDrive. So this is Microsoft's document storage platform that comes as part of the Office 365 subscription. It can be used to store documents in the cloud for easy access from any of your devices. When OneDrive is used with Automate, you could simply set up a local network server folder that's connected to OneDrive, and as files arrive in your OneDrive cloud account, they get synced automatically to your local PC or server so that Automate can process those. Once the files are processed, they could then be removed from OneDrive by deleting the local copy, or maybe relocated somewhere else by moving them to a new OneDrive folder or someone else in your local network. SharePoint is also part of the Office 365 subscription. Many of our customers do use SharePoint on-premise as well. Imagine that you need to publish a scanned document or some daily reports. So today you'd have to manually upload that document to SharePoint or engage your development team to do some custom project to perform that integration. So Automate allows file and data transfers to happen seamlessly as reports and document files become available for publishing. Document libraries can be used for publishing documents to a shared location or receiving incoming documents. And SharePoint lists can be used to send and receive data from database tables or online forms. And the best part of all this is that it's built into Automate's SharePoint actions so that they're easy to use. And you probably don't need to have a SharePoint developer anyone developing these to any of your document publishing tasks. And I've had several discussions with teams that already know PowerShell quite well and would like to continue utilizing those scripts within Automate. So the nice part there is that Automate can be used to quickly put a scheduling, logging, and notification management wrapper around any existing PowerShell script. So also any of the thousands of individual PowerShell actions can be used within Automate to extend our 700 plus built-in actions while also allowing you to pass information from Automate into your scripts and also return information from your scripts back into Automate. We don't force you to give up PowerShell if that's what you like to use for automation scripting, but once you've used Automate, you'll find that often our drag and drop actions are much easier for most things you might be automating in PowerShell, such as making API calls. Microsoft is continually expanding its cloud offering. So Azure is Microsoft's hosting platform for Windows or Linux virtual machines, as well as file storage, Active Directory, cloud-based SQL Server database access, and more. For our customers who do use Azure Cloud, Amazon Cloud, or any other public cloud, Automate can work to automate some of the work on-premise, fully in cloud, or in a hybrid mode to provide automation across your entire spectrum of servers. All right, so let's go and take a look at how RPA from Fortress Automate can help automate your various Microsoft tasks. Automate is a robotic process automation solution used for building, managing, and launching custom business process tasks in Windows. Task developers use drag and drop actions to build managed tasks which run on a scheduled basis or in response to event triggers. Automate Windows tasks are built without writing low-level scripts or code. And Automate gives you all of the predefined steps for over 700 common tasks. Use the actions to build tasks and then schedule the tasks based on triggers such as time, event log entry, startup, file monitoring, and much more. Automate is built to allow even those who are non-technical to rapidly develop their own automations using our drag and drop form-driven development approach. There doesn't have to be any coding involved when building out your automation tasks. There are a few key areas that allows us to achieve this rapid development. You can generally loop those into two categories, front-of-glass automations and back-of-glass automations. For front-of-glass automations, we have our UI automation. Think about any sort of task that involves working with a desktop-based application or a web browser. Maybe you're going out to a website to gather data that needs to be recorded into an Excel workbook or a database. Basically, any sort of automation that mimics exactly what an end user might be doing on the screen, such as clicking on buttons or links within an app or a browser. We can quickly build out these UI automations using our step recorder. The recorder will automatically identify the elements on the screen that you're interacting with, capture the needed information to include in your task for automation. Everything else typically falls into that back-of-glass category or integrations. Think of any other sort of interaction that we can execute programmatically or without users involved, like working with a database or an API. Automate has a very robust API integration kit. We can work with both REST and SOAP-based APIs, supporting all the modern authentication standards such as OAuth 2.0. We can even easily take any sort of API response payload and parse out that XML or JSON and grab any data that we need. Again, there's also over 700 native actions built into the platform today. These are pre-built integrations into different apps and technologies, things like Excel, email, and databases that require no coding to interact with. They're all form-driven, so you just have to fill in the needed fields to perform the intended action. Automate can also read in data from a source, such as Excel file or database, store that data into a variable or data set, then loop through that data, applying conditional logic and rules-based processing to validate that data or perform other tasks in your organization. And we'll look at all of this in just a moment. We kind of walk through a couple different demos. And with that, let's go ahead and jump into the task builder and build out a few examples. All right, so the first activity is going to demonstrate how Automate can easily manipulate and work with Excel files. And this is probably one of the top applications that we see being used in automation, since so many people deal with Excel files in their day-to-day work. In this particular example, we're going to be reading in data from an existing Excel file that has some sales data. And we can take a peek at that file here. And what we're going to do here is parse out this data, and we're going to pull out only the rows that match our specified criteria. And in this case, what we're interested in seeing is any sale that has a discount of greater than 25%. So our Excel actions are a great tool to automate a simple task such as this, where we need to take a large set of data, parse it out, find something specific, and then either create a new Excel file with that data, or even put that data into another system like a database or ERP system. So let's go ahead and walk through how we could build out a task like this. So for those maybe unfamiliar with the Automate Task Builder, fairly simple setup. What we're going to be really dealing with for the most part today is going to be our native actions, which you see listed here in this bottom left-hand panel. So you may see those listed in a category view where you have to look through the categories to find the ones you need. I prefer to view it here, all actions in the same panel, so we can simply search through and find what we're looking for. There is a search box at the bottom as well, so if I wanted to deal with Excel, I can simply type that in, and it returns any of the Excel actions here for me. But the first thing to do, so again, we're going to be taking an Excel file, we're going to read in that data, we're going to parse it out, and find any of the rows in that file that contain a discount value greater than 25%. So the first thing we do is open up that Excel workbook and read in some data. And for that, again, we're going to use our native actions. We have our Excel native action category over here on the left. I simply drag that into the center panel. We see our action properties dialog box pop up. And here we're just going to fill in the needed fields for this particular action. And you see all those sub actions here available on the left that we could also perform. So we can click through these if we need to change which one we selected. You see all the different options, opening a workbook, getting cells, setting cells, running Excel macros. To start this off, though, we're going to go ahead and open an existing workbook. So I'll use our open create workbook action. We'll choose open from the dropdown. And we always need to give anytime we're opening a file or making a connection to a database, we're going to be giving this a session name. Typically, you can leave it as the default, but in this instance, as we are working with multiple different Excel files, to make it a little easier to keep the two straight, I'm gonna go ahead and rename this session. We're gonna call this first one, we'll just call it sales data. And here we're going to pick the file that we're interested in opening. We could manually type this path in, but to make it even simpler, we click this little button here, and we're going to go ahead and browse out to that folder and grab out that file. And by default, it's going to look for the main Excel file formats. We can simply click this drop down. This happens to be a CSV file, which our Excel actions can also work with, so we'll simply select that. We could optionally specify passwords if we required those to open or modify that particular file. And one other thing I'll point out, so when dealing with Excel, we have our Excel actions, but we also have our open document spreadsheet actions. And these are pretty useful. One being that they can perform a few different actions that the Excel action category cannot. But they're also the benefit being that you don't actually have Excel installed on the system where this is running for these actions to work properly. So they don't require Excel to be installed and actually run a little bit faster. So if you don't actually need the Excel application for your particular automation task, kind of best practice there would be to go ahead and use the open document spreadsheet actions just so you don't have Excel on there and that it does just run a little bit faster in the background. All right, so we have our Excel file opened up. One thing that we're going to do with this particular task is we're going to be writing this information we're gathering back to a new Excel file. So I'm going to go ahead and create that here at the beginning as well. Again, utilizing our open create workbook action. But instead of the open, we're going to choose create here. And again, give this a session name. This is, we'll just call this discount data since, we're dealing with the data that has the higher discounts on it. And again, specify our file name and path here. I'm going to utilize our file explorer again, and it's just so I can grab that path because I'm kind of lazy here, and we'll just call it discount data. I'm going to put a timestamp on the front. I believe it's 123 for that, and we'll select there. And we can also create this from a template. So if we wanted to create multiple Excel files, we had some template we wanted to use, we could specify that here as well. And we could also say, if this file happens to exist, go ahead and overwrite it here for us, which I'm going to go ahead and select now just in case it does exist here. All right, so we got our two workbooks created. The next thing we do is actually read in all of that data from our existing sales document. To do that, we're going to use our get cells action here. As for the source, we're going to choose by session. So the sessions we created previously here, we got our sales data session and our discount data session. We want to choose sales data here. So we're grabbing that first workbook that contains all of our sales information. And then what are we going to get? Are we getting a single cell by reference or position, or a range of cells by reference or position? So I want everything in this particular document. So I'm going to choose a range of cells by reference because that's how I like to think about Excel files. So, A1, A2, B2. We could do it by position where it's, row start and column start and ends. A little bit tougher for me to think about, so I always choose to prefer by reference. And then we're going to create and populate a data set with this information. So a data set is just an object that exists within Automate to hold all the information that we're reading from this workbook in a tabular format, in memory, so we can work with it throughout the rest of the task. So nothing really to get too fancy beyond that. We just need to give it a name. I like to prefix my data sets with DS for data set so I can easily identify what type of object they are. And we'll just call this sales data. We can pick our starting reference again here. We'll start at the beginning. We could pick our ends. If this is a static set of data every time this task runs, we could specify that end reference here. Or we could say auto-detect the end of this file, so that way it doesn't matter if it is a variable number of rows every time this particular task executes. It's always going to grab the appropriate amount of data. And similarly here, let's go ahead and grab that first row's column name so we can use those as well. All right, so we got our two workbooks open. We've read in our data. I'm actually going to go ahead and close out that initial workbook right now. So always good practice to get into. Anytime you're creating a session, when you're done with it, go ahead and end it just to clean things up after yourselves. You have nothing lingering in memory. So I'm going to choose our sales data session, and I'm not interested in saving it here, so I'm going to say don't save changes. All right, so the next thing we need to do is to actually create a data set here for the information that we're going to read from the sales data file. So anytime we run into a row that has a discount greater than 25%, we want to capture that data, and we're going to store it in a data set temporarily so that we can write that back to our new Excel workbook. So I'm going to utilize our data set action here, and we use our create. Give this a name. We'll just call this DS discounts. And then here we need to specify the column names if we want to have those on there. If you don't specify, I'm just going to call them column 1, column 2, column 3, etc. We can just grab these directly from our existing workbook. I can copy these out, and we can paste these in. Paste them in pretty well. So there's space delimited here. So I'm going to change this delimiter to a space instead of comma because I'm lazy. Don't want to change those to commas. And now we can close out our workbook here. All right, so we got our data set created now, initialized here with our column headings. So to kind of keep going here, the next thing we're going to do is actually to loop through all of the data in our sales workbook. But before we get that far, I need to actually go ahead and run this task, and that is to go ahead and populate these data sets with all of their various fields. So anytime we're creating the data sets, we want to be able to reference any of the various columns within those. We need to go ahead and run through the task once you're in the task builder so that it knows what they are and can read those in. So I'm going to run this with the exception of this step here. We don't need to create our other workbook, but let's go and open up, read in our existing data here and just see all that information. So open up our file, Should create that data set for us and then close out this workbook here. All right. So that should do that. So as I mentioned, we're going to loop through this data. So we have a number of different looping mechanisms that we can utilize here within the task builder. So we see our loop category down here. I'm going to drag a loop in, and you see all the different loop types that we can utilize. So we can loop through our range, or maybe looping through a set of numbers, some index that we're utilizing to count through things. We could use an expression where we're saying looping until something is true. In this instance, though, we're doing a data set loop. So I'm interested in looping through every row of this sales data from that Excel workbook. So every row we go through, we're going to perform some subset of actions on. And I'm going to uncheck these boxes so we can loop through every single row. And then for each row, what are we going to do? Well, we need to test to see if that discount field is greater than 25%. So to do that, I'm going to utilize our if statement here. So we'll grab an if, and I'm going to utilize a condition. And what are we going to test for? We're going to test to see if that discount column is over 25%. So we can utilize our expression builder here to access that column. We see our local variables folder here where we see that discounts data set here, all of its fields, our sales data set with all of its fields. If we got any variables, that would also show up here. So I'm going to grab our discount field, insert that, and then we don't want to see if it's equal to, we want to see if it's greater than, and the value here is 0.25. And we need to put this in quotes so that it recognizes the value properly here when it's evaluated. All right, so now that we're testing to see if it's greater than 0.25, what are we going to do? Well, we're going to capture that data and we're going to insert it here into this data set that we created. So I'm going to grab our data set actions again, and we're going to do an insert row action into our discounts data set. And we're going to insert this at the end. We could utilize an index to put it in a certain location, but here, every time we loop through, we're just going to pop it at the end of this data set. And then what information we're putting in the data set? Well, we can use our load columns here, which pulls all those columns that we added into the column headings here when we created it. And then for the values, we need to specify the values from that particular row of the data set sales data here. So we can utilize our expression builder again. We see all of our column names, so we'll grab the appropriate values here by accessing that expression builder. So we just need to go down to our sales data, and that first one was sales ID. So we'll select that, customer ID, product ID, we have a date, our quantity, the unit price, the total price, the discount value that we were interested in seeing, the payment method, and lastly, the sales rep. All right, so we have a lot of fields filled in here. We can click OK. And then now that we have all that information we looped through, we've grabbed any columns, or excuse me, any rows that are greater than 0.25 in the discount field, added them to our data set. We need to write that back to our Excel file. So once again, let's grab our Excel actions, use our set cells here, choosing our correct session. So we're interested in putting in that discount data session. Source, again, is a data set. We're going to write a data set back. We could write a single value back. We could write a list of values back. We want to write that DS discounts data set back to this file. Again, by reference into A1, and we're going to use the column names as well. And again, last thing, let's clean up after ourselves. Let's close out that other workbook. So we'll close out our discount data, and we're going to save it on completion as well. All right, so now if we run this, it should go ahead and pop open both of those workbooks. It'll read in that data. It's going to loop through it and grab any row where the discount is greater than 0.25 and write that to a new workbook. So let's see. Oops, I think I had my other file open. Let's try this one more time. Slide this over to the side here so we can kind of see the status and the progress here back in the task builder, so we can see each of the steps as we get through them. So we see the new file open, the sales data file closed, and now it's looping through all of those fields or all of the rows from the initial data set, finding the ones that are greater than 0.25 and writing them back to this new file. So as you can see, a very simple process as far as taking a larger set of data, looking through it, parsing it out, and writing that data back to either another file. We could also just as easily write this into a database or send it to some other third-party system. All right, so that kind of completes the task number 1 here with Excel to Excel data parsing. The next activity that we're going to be working on is going to show how we can query data from a database and something like SQL Server and capture that data into an Excel file so that we could potentially further manipulate like we just did or perform some other actions on. So again, fairly common practice where we're taking data from one source and maybe moving it to another source. Here at the top, you see I'm creating some variables. This is something I didn't actually do in the previous example, but something that's good practice to get into. So anytime we are doing things like referencing a file path or a file name, or we have something like this, a list of items that we need to maybe loop through, good practice to get into is to create variables here at the top for those. That way, when you reference them down in your actual activity, if you have to change something, you have one spot to change instead of having to search through and find all those various references and update them individually. So good habit to get into, create your variables here at the top. So we have our file path. I have a list of states. So this is just a line separated list of some couple states here. I have a variable to hold the current state we're going to be looping through. And then I'm going to establish a connection to a SQL database so we can query some data. So I'm going to utilize our database actions here. And this doesn't have to be a SQL database. Again, this could just as easily be any other ODBC connected database, Oracle, whatever, what have you. As far as the Open SQL connection action, we have a couple options here as how we can make this connection. If we choose database, we can create this connection right here within this action. We could also utilize a connection string, a data link file, or a predefined connection. So you can actually create these connections in the Automate management console ahead of time and just specify them from the list here. I have this connected directly within this particular action. So you would click the build connection here and choose your provider first, and then enter in your server name and instance, your authentication information, and you could select the database from your list here, test your connection, make sure everything works properly, and then you're kind of good to go. Again, give it a session name. Since we're only working with one database session, I'm going to leave this as the default here. In this instance, we're going to be looping through a list. So we're going to loop through that list of states here, and we're going to query some data from our SQL Server for each of those. So I utilized here, you see all of our looping mechanisms. Again, we have a list loop. So again, utilizing that variable of our states. So the 3 states we had listed there. I'm going to loop through each, and for each iteration, I'm going to take that state and populate that variable that we had created previously with the current one in the list. And just the delimiter here, again, is that new line from our list action. And then we're going to utilize a SQL query action. So we have the ability to run, any type of SQL query directly from Automate as well. Again, utilizing it by session. So our connection here is our session we've created previously from this list. And then really just putting in, any common transact SQL statement, just like you would have put, in your SQL management console. So we have a select statement here. We're grabbing a bunch of information from our user data table, where our state equals that current state that we're interested in, that we have, that we're looping through. So we're going to loop through each of these and populate any matches into a data set here. We have our DS people data set. And for each of those queries, we're going to go ahead and open and create a new workbook. So you see, same thing we saw previously. We're creating a new Excel workbook. I've utilized my variables here from my path, and then I've incorporated the state variable into my actual file name. So it's going to create a new file for each of the different states. So we have all of the different customers in their own workbook. And I'm going to create this from a template as well. So I've selected from a template here, selected that template again, utilizing that file path variable and overriding if it already exists. And similar to the last one here, we're going to set that information into that workbook. Again, choosing our session we created above, putting in a data set, DS people, and into that top A1 corner there. I've got a waiting here just so we can see this as it's running, so it doesn't close the workbook too quickly, but I do close out that workbook once it writes to it, and then we loop through for the other states in that list. And once again, when we're done, we're going to close out that SQL connection there. So let's go ahead and run this, and we can take a look at how this operates. So looping through here, it's going to create that first workbook after perform that SQL query. See the workbook opening up, and it's writing all the information in, and it's going to close that out and proceed on through our loop for the next state, which is California, and then it'll perform the same actions for DC. And if we take a look here at our folder here, we see all three of those files that were created, and there's a template file as well that we utilized. So successfully created all three of those files, taking them from our data from our database source and creating a bunch of various Excel reports with that data that we could then, maybe email out to people, send to some other, third party if need be. Okay, activity number 3 here is going to showcase how we can get an email and its contents from an Exchange mailbox, capture some data from it, and then send that information to another system. A good example of this, maybe you have a mailbox where you receive invoices. You want that task to kick off. Anytime an email shows up with an invoice, grab the invoice, parse it for data, put that information into some third-party system. So we're going to show just how we can do that with our Exchange and OCR actions. So common to the previous couple activities here, we're creating our variables here at the top. I've got my secret for my Exchange connection, some variables to hold the information we're reading from our invoice files, and then a data set to hold all that information as well from those invoices. So we're going to be creating a data set and putting that into an Excel file like we have done for the past couple activities here. So we see that data set, again, just comma separated delimiter here for our column headers that we've specified. And then we're going to create that Exchange session. So we're going to utilize our Exchange actions here, our create session sub action. You can see we support WebDAV, Exchange Web Services, or Exchange Web Services Online for Office 365. Again, we're making a connection. We're going to give that a session name, but since we are just making this one session, I'm leaving it as the default again. Specify the mailbox we're interested in monitoring here. So we're going to specify Mr. Alex W's mailbox here, and then our connection information to our Office 365 tenant. Optionally, down here in the advanced section, we could go ahead and say we're looking for a specific folder. In this instance, I'm just curious for the inbox itself. Maybe you have a particular folder that these emails may arrive into that you want to monitor or query. You would specify that here. All right, so now we're going to utilize our Exchange get objects action. So again, picking it by session, we can choose that session we created above. For the objects we're gathering emails here, but we could also gather appointments, contacts, or tasks. And then what we're doing with the information, again, creating a data set with it, DS emails. And here's how we're going to filter this out to only grab the information that we need. So we have the ability to not just grab every email in that particular folder. We can actually query for specific things within there. So we can utilize either our custom filter approach here, or you could utilize the Exchange message query language there to query for certain things. If you're just something simple, this is the easiest way to go. You can just simply click add. We have some common properties that we can utilize here, things like our subjects, to fields, if it has attachments or not, and then some operators here. Does it contain, not contain, equal, less than, greater than? So here I'm interested in emails that have a subject that contains the word invoice and that it has an attachment. So has attachment equals true. And for any attachments, I'm going to save those here into my email invoices folder, which we can specify, and again, override anything that may already exist there. And because we're done with our Exchange session, we're going to go ahead and close that down. Again, good practice. Let's clean up after ourselves. And now for each of those invoice files that we have downloaded or any of the attachments that we've downloaded, we're going to again loop through those things. So we have, again, in our looping actions, we have a files loop. So we can specify, in this instance, a folder of files that we're interested in looping through. And the nice thing about this is you can actually utilize wildcards here. So we don't just have to loop through everything in the folder. I can say only loop through PDFs or only loop through files that have this certain file name prefix on them. So you can kind of utilize wildcards here to narrow down what you're interested in looping into. And then we're going to populate a variable with the current file name that we're on in our loop here, in our var file name. And the mode here just indicates what we're looping through. Is it files? Is it folders? Is it files and folders? We could populate a data set if we need to as well. I don't need to in this instance. And then we have some options here. We could utilize an exclude mask to exclude certain files again. We could use a regular expression for that if need be, or we could even say, only grab files that are newer than a certain date, older than a certain date, or in between these dates here. And for each of these files, we're going to utilize our OCR actions to grab some text from them. So here we see our OCR actions, so optical character recognition, grabbing essentially static text and data off of a page. So I'm going to use our get text action. The engine itself, typically I want to use Tesseract, that's the newest one. Picking our file name here in this image section. It doesn't have to be an image. This could just as easily be something like a PDF here that we're going to utilize today. Just to show how this works, though, I'm going to grab a file that we can take a look at. Doesn't like the variable there since it's not initialized with a value yet. So we're going to grab an actual file here we can utilize to look at. So we click our pick region there, and this is going to allow us to actually choose the region of the file that we want to grab the text from. So pretty straightforward process here, just to click and drag a box around the area that we're looking for. So if we want to say grab the vendor from the top, we can simply grab that here. We see the preview here in the right side. Looks like it grabbed that little dot there at the end. So you got to be kind of careful where you're grabbing. Also, if you have maybe a third generation scan of some document, it's going to be a little harder for it to read, so you always want to make sure you've got nice clear text. So something like what we're looking at here, where we have a pretty legible text here that's not too small, very easy to see. We get some nice results here. But I'm just grabbing the vendor here, so I could grab it from, again, the logo here at the top, but oftentimes logos are a little bit more difficult to read. Better place for something like that is down here in our remit to section, where it's a little bit plainer to read there. So we can specify that region. And the same thing here for our total and our invoice number. So the three things we're interested in getting from each of these invoices. And then for all that data, what are we going to do with it? Well, we're going to, again, put this into a data set. So I've created a data set here. We created the data set above, our invoice data. And again, here's those column names. And the values we're inserting into those columns are the three variables that we created that we captured from our OCR text. So again, looping through all those files, capturing all of that data, and then again, creating a workbook here for all of that invoice data, and writing that data set of our invoice data to that workbook, again in cell A1, and then we're going to close and save everything out. So let's take a look at this particular task in action. Again, creating that Exchange session, it's going to query for any emails that match our criteria of a subject with the word invoice and has an attachment. Grab all those attachments down, and then OCR through all of those. So if we actually take a look at that particular folder, we can actually see in our invoices folder here all of the files that downloaded. So you see our attachments. And one thing about grabbing attachments, it does tend to grab things from your signature. So images, people tend to put images of their logos, or like the little LinkedIn picture in there. So it'll grab those as well. So that's another reason why we may have wanted to utilize those, like the star.pdf, so that way we don't try to accidentally OCR on something like this in here. But you saw there, I did grab all of that data out and put that into our document here for us. So which again, it saved here in that same folder. So very simple way to utilize Exchange within your automations as well, be able to take action on incoming emails that may arrive, or potentially just query a mailbox for a certain set of criteria. All right, so the final activity that we're going to work with today is going to deal with SharePoint. So if you're not familiar with SharePoint, a lot of functionality within it. It's part of the Office 365 subscription. Common task or common thing that companies use it for, though, is for a document library. So a shared place where people can upload and download files that they may need to share with other people in the organization. So here in this example, we're going to actually upload files from a local system into SharePoint automatically. So once again, we've got our variables here at the top. So I've defined my site URL. I've defined my local file path, so the files we're interested in uploading to SharePoint. And again, I can utilize wildcards here, so I'm only interested in uploading PDF files. The archive file path, so I'm going to move these files from the local folder to an archive folder once they've been uploaded, so we don't accidentally upload them again or know that they have been uploaded. And then the actual document library that we're going to move them to. So again, variables created here at the top, and then we're going to utilize our SharePoint actions here to first create our session. So a common theme we've seen here so far, and then we're going to be going and creating a session here to our SharePoint site. So the version here at the top, we support SharePoint Online or SharePoint On-Prem, and specify our site URL, which we defined earlier in our variable, and then all of our authentication information to authenticate to our SharePoint instance here. So now we've created our SharePoint session. Let's go ahead and upload those files. So here we're going to reference our session again, utilizing our upload files action. And we have the option of uploading either a single file or multiple files here. So once again, we can utilize wildcards like it specifies here at the top. So I'll use that local file path where I said to move anything that is a PDF file, and we're moving that into our sales documents document library. And we're going to go create a data set in this instance to capture all of that upload information, just in case we need to troubleshoot anything. And again, we have some file options here, so we can put in some exclusions, either by mask or ready code expression, or by date timestamp. So being able to, again, manipulate what gets uploaded there if we need to. And I am going to move these files once they have been uploaded. So we will choose to move these files with our file system actions, moving them from that local path to that archive path, which we specified again in our variables. And again, clean up after ourselves. Let's end that SharePoint session here. So if we want to take a look at first the folder itself, we can look at our SharePoint folder. You see we have some PDF files in here, some text files. Here's our archive folder that's currently empty. And if we take a look at our SharePoint site here, you see we have the SharePoint site. It does have some of those daily reports in it already. So let's go ahead and run this action or this task and take a look at these files that get moved. So again, creating our SharePoint session here, uploading those files up to SharePoint, moving those files from the local path to the archive path, and we can see here the progress as it goes. All right, so first let's check and make sure the file is moved. So as you see, it did move all of those PDF files. It did not touch those text files that existed, and now those are all in our archive path. And if we take a look at our SharePoint site, we see those monthly reports. It went ahead and uploaded and ignored those existing daily reports that were already there. So again, great use case as far as being able to utilize SharePoint within your automation tasks as well. All right, well, I think that's essentially kind of wraps us up for the demo portion of this. I think we went a little over here, so if there's any questions that are in the chat or anyone that's like to leave the question, we'll go ahead and collect those and send those responses out to the group and the follow-up email along with a recording of this particular session. So I just want to thank you for coming to this webinar, and I hope you guys learned something new today. Thanks a lot.